Hi everyone, and in today's video we will be covering the topic untouchability of your class 12 Sociology chapter 5 patterns of social inequality and exclusion. Today we will be covering the topic untouchability. So untouchability, it is an extreme and particularly vicious aspect of the caste system. So you see we are talking about the caste system here. Caste system का ही extreme और vicious form है ये, which is prescribing the stringent social sanctions against member of caste which are at the bottom of the hierarchy or bottom of the purity pollution scale. They are considered to be impure and their mere touch. So mere touch means that imagine a bubble around someone, and if someone from a higher caste believed they were pure, the idea was that even a slight brush, that is a mere touch from an untouchable person, would burst that purity bubble. And is that like a magical contagion in their minds? So here mere touch is the minimal effort of the maximum reaction. That is severely polluting the members of all other castes. Means it is the core belief. The pollutes here isn't about the germs or dirt, but about the ritualistic impurity. It's a spiritual contamination in their eyes. Severely tells us that it's not a minor issue, it's a big deal, and affected the all other castes, meaning everyone above the untouchables on the perceived social hierarchy. Here there is a concept connection, which is this ties into the concept of purity and pollution, which was a cornerstone of the traditional caste system. Higher castes maintain their purity by avoiding contact with these deemed impure, and they used to bring a terrible punishment for the former. That means former means the untouchables, and if these untouchables, if they dare to touch someone from a higher caste, or even if their shadow fell on them, it was seen as an offense which was demanding a terrible punishment. This could range from physical violence to social ostracization. So imagine a time when merely stepping on a particular path could lead to dire consequences for one group while others walked freely. And the punishment, it wasn't about justice, it was about maintaining a discriminatory system. Okay, forcing the latter to perform elaborate purification rituals. Latter means the member of all other castes who believed that they had been polluted. So to regain their perceived purity, they would have to undergo some elaborate purification rituals, which wasn't just a quick hand wash, but it could involve bathing in specific holy waters or performing specific prayers or even paying priests. It reinforced the idea of untouchability as the polluted felt compelled to cleanse themselves from the taint. Right? In fact, notions of distance pollution, this goes beyond direct touch. There were notions. Notions means ideas or beliefs. Distance pollution was a terrifying concept, which is the idea that pollution could spread without physical contact. It is just by proximity, and it can be caused in many regions of India. So this highlights that while untouchability was pan-Indian, the intensity and the specific forms of discrimination varied. The text specifically points out the south of India as a place where distance pollution was particularly prevalent. Okay, so now, despite the limited literal meaning of the word untouchability literally means what? Not able to be touched. But the text is telling us the reality, which was far more complex and pervasive than just physical contact. This institution of untouchability refers not just to avoidance or prohibition of physical contact, but a broader set of social sanctions, which is a key point. The concept wasn't just about don't touch, it was a system, a whole institution, right? A whole institution. This is a crucial takeaway. Social sanctions, they are punishments or restrictions which are imposed by the society. Untouchability was a web of rules and norms that dictated where untouchables could live, what jobs they could do, where they could work, who they could marry, and even how they could speak. So it was a complete system of exclusion. Everything was there for them. It is important to emphasize that the three main dimensions of untouchability: exclusion. Now this is important, you need to remember the three main dimensions of untouchability: exclusion, humiliation, and subordination, exploitation. So it is a brilliant summary of the multifaceted nature of untouchability. It breaks down the phenomenon into these dimensions. Exclusion. Now exclusion is about being kept out or denied access. We've already studied about this as well. Think of being locked outside a house or not able to enter into a school or denied entry to a temple. Okay. Humiliation. This is about being made to feel inferior, ashamed, and worthless. It is the it is a psychological and emotional abuse. Think of being forced to wear certain clothes, use separate utensils, or endure demeaning language. Humiliation is humble me, but in a demeaning and forced way. So you are made to realize that you are worthless, you should be shameful of yourself, and you are inferior to me. That is humiliation. Here you are abused psychologically as well as emotionally and mentally. Next is subordination. So subordination, this is about being placed in a lower rank or position, being made subservient. Think of always having to obey, always being at the bottom of the hierarchy, having no power or agency. Exploitation, this is about being used unfairly for someone else's benefit, particularly economically. So you're being forced to work for free or for very little pay or having your labor stolen. Now these are all very important to define the phenomenon. Just think, so to remember this, let me give you, just think of a table having 4 legs. So one part is exclusion, humiliation, subordination, exploitation. And if one leg is missing, the table won't be able to stand properly. So all are necessary to understand the full picture of untouchability. Okay. Although other touchable low caste are also subjected to subordination to some degree, but they do not suffer extreme from. Now, this is a nuanced point. It acknowledges that lower castes above the untouchables are also there, and they also face the issues like being bossed around, that is subordination, or being taken advantage economically, that is exploitation. And then, so here there's a critical distinction. While the other low caste might face some form of discrimination, they were not subjected to the absolute and extreme exclusion that were uniquely reserved for untouchables, which emphasizes the unparalleled severity of untouchability. So now imagine a club, okay? Some members might have fewer privileges than others, like a VIP lounge, but untouchables were not even allowed in the door or even near the door of the club. That is extreme exclusion. When you are not allowed to enter the VIP lounge, that is subordination, exploitation. But even you are not allowed to get to the door, that is, that is what untouchables were facing. Dalits also experience some of a form of exclusion which is unique. That is, now Dalit is basically a self-chosen political identity. This you need to understand. It is a self-chosen political identity, which, and Dalit basically means broken or scattered. So it is a preferred term which was formerly called untouchables, which signifies the rejection of the derogatory untouchable label and asserts their agency. So now, for instance, being prohibited to drink water. Now imagine a village well. Everyone drinks from it, but if you are a Dalit, you might have to wait for someone else to pour water for you, or drink from a separate, often inferior well, or even be denied water altogether. Now this isn't just an inconvenience, it is a denial of basic human right and a daily reminder of your inferior status. Dalits were often barred from entering temples, participating in religious ceremonies, or even using public spaces for worship. Their presence was thought to defile the sacred. Okay, so social ceremonies and festivals is basically the social gatherings like weddings, village meetings, local celebrations, where Dalits were often excluded or relegated to the periphery and denied full participation, often given demeaning roles if allowed at all. Moreover, untouchability is almost always associated with economic exploitation of various kinds. Means furthermore, signaling that this is another important point where it re-emphasizes the link between social discrimination and economic hardship, and the major form of exploitation, which is the imposition. Imposition means forcing something upon someone else. So various forms of forced labors like Bigar, where Dalits were compelled to work for dominant caste without pay or meager wages. This trapped them in a cycle of poverty and dependence. Now, confiscation of poverty, here it means that taking away property, often by force or without legal right, which would involve land, livestock, other assets, and it would leave Dalits more vulnerable or dispossessed. Finally, untouchability is a pan-Indian phenomenon. It means it exists all across all India, and there were specific forms, but the intensity differed based on the regions and the socio-historic context. Also, the untouchables, here it points to the long history of the social group and the various terms which were used to label them by the dominant groups, which suggests a shift in the terminology over time. Now, here, whatever the specific Etymology. Etymology is the study of the origin and history of words. So the text is saying that it doesn't matter where these names came from historically. This is a crucial. Now they are derogatory. Derogatory means insulting, disrespectful. Pejorative, which means expressing disapproval, having a negative or belittling effect. So now Mahatma Gandhi, he had popularized the term Harijan. Harijan, which means children of God, so that the discrimination which is being faced by the Dalits can be somehow stopped. However, the ex-untouchable communities and their leaders, means the formerly labeled untouchable communities, they don't use that term anymore. The leaders introduced a new word for them, which is Dalit. Dalit is a widely accepted and respectful term to refer to these communities. Dalit translates into downtrodden, which means someone who has been crushed or oppressed. This word powerfully expresses the historical suffering and marginalization they have faced. And interestingly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who is a key leader for Dalit rights, did not invent or use this word Dalit. However, the values and goals behind the word match Ambedkar ideas, which is justice, equality and upliftment. The term Dalit became popular during the 1970s, especially amid caste-related violence and riots in Mumbai. It became a symbol of resistance and identity. This is termed Dalit Panther, which is a radical group, a powerful social movement which was inspired by the Black Panther movement in the US. This group helped promote the term Dalit to assert pride in their identity, demand equal rights, and fight discrimination and violence. This was all for this video, wherein we discussed about untouchability in very detailed manner. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you.